Did you know that a single mistake on the first lap of the Brazilian GP turned Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari into an undrivable car? And that their engineer revealed that they lost so much performance that it was like racing a car without wings? Today we tell you exactly how much time Hamilton lost, and why this incident could be a turning point for the entire season. The moment the traffic lights went out, chaos broke out in the middle of the grid. The first corner, a traditionally dangerous funnel, was the scene of the first spark that would set Hamilton's destiny on fire. Carlos Sainz, now a Williams driver, hit the left rear part of the SF25 while braking. Although the blow was not visually devastating, it completely destabilized the rear balance of the Ferrari. Immediately, over the radio, Hamilton reported that the car was not stable in the back. A phrase that, although brief, hit a deep technical concern. The race could continue, yes, but the car was no longer the same. And the worst was yet to come. Just a few seconds later, in an attempt to regain positions after that first loss of time, Hamilton looked for a risky maneuver on the main straight. There was the Alpine of the young Argentine Franco Colapinto. Both came with a similar pace, but Hamilton underestimated the distance and closing speed. The result was brutal. It rammed directly into the rear of the Alpine, breaking its front wing completely. The damage was visible, immediate, and serious. But the most critical thing was not what was seen on the outside, but what happened under the car. The broken front wing was partially embedded under the bottom of the SF25, damaging one of the most sensitive areas of any modern single-seater, the floor. And if there is something that defines performance in this generation of cars, it is precisely that, the aerodynamics that come from the ground. Damage to that area not only compromises efficiency, but affects the balance, stability, and confidence of the pilot. It took just one lap for Ferrari engineers to confirm what was already evident from the telemetry. The car was mortally wounded. Hamilton continued on the track briefly, trying to assess whether there was any chance of continuing. But the car wouldn't turn. The rear axle was uncontrollable. Grip disappeared with every fast corner. What was once a machine designed to tame Interlagos had become an untamed, erratic beast with no future on the track. By that time, the damage had already been done. The loss of time per lap was abysmal. The career engineer knew it. Fred Vasseur knew it. And finally, Hamilton accepted it. There was no point in continuing to push that Ferrari. The race was over before it began. But in Formula One, true disasters are rarely seen in slow motion. They are understood when engineers open the data. And that, what they revealed later, was the most shocking of all. When the Brazilian Grand Prix ended, many thought that what happened to Hamilton had been simply another retirement in the statistics. But what came next, with the statements of Ferrari engineers and the revelation of internal data, transformed what seemed like an incident on the track into one of the most chilling technical warnings of the entire season. And we are not exaggerating. Riccardo Adami, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer, revealed something that until then had been handled with absolute secrecy inside the red box. Hamilton's Ferrari SF25 had lost between 35 and 40 points of downforce as a direct consequence of the double incident on the first lap. This figure by itself is already terrifying for any Formula One engineer. But it is even more so if we place it in a real technical context. 1 point of aerodynamic load is equivalent, in a simplified way, to an improvement of 0.01 in the lift coefficient of the car. Although the exact figures vary depending on the design, circuit configuration, and team philosophy, there is an unwritten rule in the paddock. For every 5 charging points lost, a car loses between 1.5 and 2/10 of a second per lap. That is, with 40 points of loss, we are talking about between 0.8 and 1.2 seconds per lap of disadvantage. In modern Formula One, that's the difference between fighting for points or being completely out of the fight. Fred Vasseur was direct, without embellishments or euphemisms. When you are last and you are missing 40 points of downforce, there is no point in continuing on the track. You are killing the engine, tires, and chassis for nothing. This decision was not just a performance abandonment, it was a strategic protection of the power unit, the chassis and components that could compromise future races if they were forced without the possibility of scoring. A cold and calculated thought, but completely necessary. The aerodynamic loss not only translated into loss of time, it transformed the entire behavior of the SF25. The car lost stability in fast corners, began to violently understeer when entering corners and oversteer when exiting them. Hamilton described it with a phrase that chilled the blood of many in the paddock. It felt like the rear suspension was broken. That is the feeling generated by a car without grip on the rear axle. But there was no mechanical breakage. What there was an absolute aerodynamic collapse. Furthermore, the damage was not limited to a single part of the car. The floor, the most critical area for ground effect, was destroyed. But also the front spoiler, the side barge boards, the aerodynamic vortices. The entire airflow that allows the car to stick to the ground was interrupted or distorted. And this isn't just a matter of speed, it's a matter of control. A car without downforce stops behaving like a precision machine and becomes an unpredictable projectile. And the most worrying thing of all is that this situation could repeat itself. Because if there is one thing that this incident made clear, it is that, in modern F1, the limit between a champion car and a retirement on the first lap can be a simple touch in turn 1. When a Formula 1 car is forced to retire due to physical damage, television shows the visual drama. The car entering the pits, the driver's frustration, the mechanics working in a hurry. But in reality, that moment is only the tip of the iceberg. The true consequences of an abandonment like that of Hamilton in Brazil are not seen. They drag on silently for weeks, even months. And that is what makes this incident much more serious than a simple damaged car. To begin with, we must understand that each power unit in Formula 1 is planned to the millimeter. Motors, gearboxes, batteries, energy recovery systems, all have a limited number of uses before penalties are imposed. If a car suffers an accident like the one in Brazil and still continues to rotate for unnecessary laps, the accumulated stress can drastically reduce the life of those components. And that, in a season where every point counts, can translate into strategically devastating sanctions. Ferrari, with the decision to stop the car, protected more than an engine. He protected his own competitive future. But that decision was also a silent cry of resignation. In other words, there is nothing to do today. Let's better think about tomorrow. But tomorrow is not built only with intact pieces. It also depends on the technical development of the car. And there arises another invisible problem. When a team faces an accident of this magnitude, they don't just lose the car of the day, they lose the ability to compare data. All teams plan their weekends with cross simulations between their two cars. The data produced by one car serves to validate that of the other. But if one of the two is knocked out in the first round, the team operates blind. This means that any decisions made during the rest of the race, whether on tires, race pace, or strategy, are biased. And that compromises not only that weekend, but also the feedback for the development of the car in the factory. In Hamilton's case, this was especially critical. The SF25 is still an evolving machine. Ferrari has described it as a car with great potential, but extremely sensitive to balance changes. The feedback that a driver like Hamilton can provide is vital to adjusting that narrow performance window. And losing him so early in Brazil was a colossal technical loss. But the consequences are not limited to the mechanical or the strategic. There is an emotional dimension that cannot be ignored. Hamilton is a driver who lives by sensations. His confidence in the car, the team, and his own instincts is what has defined his style for more than a decade. And when a car betrays you, because that's what Hamilton felt in Brazil, mechanical betrayal, that trust is eroded. In his own words after the race, he acknowledged that after the crash, the car behaved as if something was broken. But it wasn't. It was like driving on ice. That feeling, that lack of response, can set the tone for future races. Because no driver can go to the limit if he doubts his machine. And if that doubt sets in, there is no setup or strategy that will quickly erase it. What happened in Brazil did not end in round 2. It started there. Because the real wounds are those that are not seen on the track. To begin with, the incident brutally exposed one of the most uncomfortable truths for Ferrari. Its car remains extraordinarily fragile. Not in the sense of mechanical reliability, but in something much more dangerous: structural vulnerability in the aerodynamic design. The loss of 40 load points after an impact that in other teams would have only meant a wing change makes it clear that the SF25 has an inherent weakness in the floor area. And that is not a simple technical detail. It is a death sentence in the fight for second place in the championship. His words after the race were revealing. There was no anger, there were no excuses, but there was obvious disappointment. I felt like the car wasn't responding, like something was wrong with the suspension. Leave it in the comments what you think about all this.